Hey, welcome everybody to the episode 12 of the Show Will Go On Business Survival Series. I'm your host, Tom Stimson, and yes, I am wearing a jacket. I am dressed up for you today because today is a milestone. This is our 12th episode. This was the theoretical end of the series, but it's going to continue, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's going to continue in a different way. We're graduating from the crisis management and triage that we've been going through for the past, well, more than 3 months, but certainly through our 12 episodes of this. So today will be a little bit of a recap. And so it's kind of some cause for celebration. This is your graduation. You're going to have a virtual graduation ceremony. There it was. I hope you enjoyed it. So the crisis management part of what we're doing is over. If you're still in a crisis, trust me, it's you, not the circumstances, right? You've graduated, you can get back to running your business again. The circumstances aren't necessarily great, but if you haven't figured out how to get your business ready for what's next in the past 12 to 14 weeks, I don't know what else we can do for you. But keep watching, keep making incremental improvements. That's what this is all about. So this is a day of celebration. I'm celebrating. Over the past 3 months, we've met this crisis. We've responded mindfully and thoroughly, I think. We've changed our courses. We have new events they're starting to rekindle now. They're not necessarily familiar, but there's some things about them that seem familiar, and we know how to do them, and we're learning how to do the rest. We're adapting. We have new tools. We're playing with new stuff, learning new techniques, and we're going to continue to adapt because that's what we do. We have mastered the fundamentals of crisis management. Now it's time to go out there and apply what we've learned in our real world and keep on going, keep our businesses going. So we've got to continue to survive. So this will still be the survival series. But for now, I'd like to spend a little time and go back and look back on what we've accomplished. Before I do that, of course, I need to thank Avixa once again. They have asked us to continue this series of webinars through July. We are supporting a lot of programs and focus on the live events community through Avixa. And this is a great way to bring attention to that, as well as continue to give you guys some free content, some of my time and attention. So they've renewed us. There's a live events council. If you're not familiar with that, if you'll join, individual membership is free. You can join the council and get involved in deciding how we do some things within the association. One thing they do is the Live Events Council puts on the Live Events Forum, which is normally at the show, at the InfoComm show, but it's going to be in July virtually this year. We're very excited about that. And there's market analysis surveys, and there's so much more that Avixa does for us. Beth, I'm sorry, I'm putting your name and email on here. Beth Knight is the person at Avixa who is our person. She's very focused on our industry. She's who I deal with and helping you bring these things to you. She's the one that puts together the Friday events. Quick shout out for InfoComm Connected, which is the online version of InfoComm, which is taking place, I think, a week after next. Go register. 3 days of content and programs that you can enjoy live or come back and look at it later. Probably some surprises and things that we don't even know about. But if you don't register, then you don't get to participate. So go register. It's free. Why wouldn't you do that? The Business Survival Exchange, which Beth puts on every Friday, will continue. So please get involved in that. It's a great way to discuss the things that we're talking about here and broaden your network. Develop new peers, get outside your bubble, find people that you can do business with and trade ideas with offline. It's a great program. I'm glad they put it together. I hope they will keep it up and for as long as possible. But really, if you don't use it, it doesn't happen. I've been involved with Avixa for a long time. And the bottom line is, if the members don't participate and don't take advantage of the programs, they're going to spend their time and energy on something else. So get involved, express your needs, let them know the things that you need from the association to help you out. They're good folks. They're going to listen to you, and they want to put things out there for you. Trust me. of course, the webinar is being recorded. You can still find it on the same replay page. We're going to restructure the page a little bit and put the first 12 series towards the bottom, and we're going to add the new ones at the top for the next set of webinars that we're going to do. Slightly different topic and format. I'll talk more about that later on in the program. I'm going to continue to help people for free. If you need a 15-minute call, you need some help with your business, making a decision. I talked to a young person the other day, wanted to know more about getting an MBA. I don't care what you call about. I'm happy to help you. I get recharged by being able to do this. So you're doing me a favor if you take advantage of that, because I do it willingly. So please take advantage of that if it's valuable to you. AV Matters podcast. Wallace and I are recording another one tomorrow, so I'm sure that'll be up beginning of next week. Of course, we have the AV Matters Facebook group. Keep involved with that. Now, on to this week's content. I want to get through it. I want to start trying to keep these down to an hour, and you need to get back to work. We're not all just sitting around in our pajamas anymore. We have things to do, so I want to be respectful of your time. And we'll have lots of time to answer questions in the next 8 weeks, so we'll keep that part of this going forward. So the word of the week is forward. Today, I want to remind you of how far we've come, what big lessons that we've learned in the past 12 weeks. We're never going to forget about this period in our careers, and I hope we talk about this for decades, because that means nothing worse has happened. So hopefully this will be the biggest crisis you'll ever face in your career. And we'll all sit around one day and talk about it, and how easy it was, and how the kids today just don't know how to handle problems. So the chat question in your chat today, I would love some feedback. Tell each other, some of you haven't been on every webinar, what's the best piece of advice, idea, or tool or thing that you've taken away? What's something that you think about that you can attribute back to the webinar series that you are applying in your business? How are you applying it? Why is it important to you? Just share a little bit of something there. It will help other people know what they need to go back and listen for again and look for again. Now, I'm going to try and help your memory a little bit by recapping a few of the things that we've learned along the way. I went back and looked at every webinar. I listened to a lot of our phone conversations, our 15-minute phone calls, for the ones that I had recorded, to hear, what were we talking about, 8, 10, 12 weeks ago. And so let's do a little recap. In week 1 of the series, the very first webinar I do, if you'll recall, I had a regular monthly webinar scheduled on March 18th. And the closer we got to it, the closer I realized that whatever topic I had was useless. We had to talk about the situation at hand. And a matter of fact, I almost moved it up a week earlier, but we started on the 18th, and it was a humdinger. It was quite the event, and we've had thousands of people come back and view it. So there's some very important information in there. We first of all talked a little bit about the whole 7 stages of awareness: the denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Many of us are still in that depression stage. And if I, look objectively at what's going on around me and the conversations I'm having with you, there's a lot of depression. There's still a little bit of bargaining. There's still a little bit of denial and anger on issues from time to time. But a lot of us have gotten to that waiting period, that airplane mode, or just close enough to it, and we're not quite getting the whole way there. Acceptance are stages 5, 6, and 7 in my model. Acceptance means I get to airplane mode. I've made those final cuts that I need to make. We're in waiting mode. We've got business that we're going to develop. We have tools we're going to work on. I've got my new systems worked out to work with a minimal staff. Your schedule, you're going to wait it out. But here's the thing. We're not having to wait because there's activity going on, and every week it is picking up. It may not have hit your market in your space, but it's coming. Every week, more and more people that I talk to, and certainly in my peer groups, there's another 20, 22 people that I talk to every week that are telling us what's happening in their world and the number of projects that are coming their direction. Now, when I'm in acceptance, then I can think about retooling, rebooting back up, scaling back up to take care of multiple businesses, multiple projects at the same time. So mark your calendar. Today, June 3rd, is the day you accept that this is what you have, and now you have to make it work. Everything going forward here is you've got what you got, make it work. Accept what it is, and it's time to move on. And how long should we wait? I don't know. You've got a cash flow spreadsheet that says how long you can wait, and you're always trying to move that out there. But your market's going to tell you how long the wait is. And for many of you, the wait is over, right? There's stuff happening out there. It's not last year. It's not normal business, but there's enough business for the company that you are right now. Okay, so it's not a ton, but that's why you downsized your business, isn't it? Because you knew there would be a little bit of business coming back. And remember, we didn't think any business was coming back until at least August or September, right? So in week one, I told you plan on no revenue through August. You said I was crazy. And then 2 weeks later, you're saying I didn't say out far enough. I should say the rest of the year. We talked about making hard decisions, and many of you did. One of the interviews that I reviewed for getting ready for today was a Jumpstart attendee, a loyal attendee, who told me that he and the boss, the owner of the company, had independently come to the conclusion that all of this COVID stuff would be over by end of May, maybe back to normal by June. Then they watched the March 18th webinar 1, and he says it got us to take actions weeks sooner than we would have done it. They had cut back some hours. They'd let a couple of people go that they didn't want to keep anyway. They really hadn't done anything substantive. And after that, they were able to do the furloughs that they needed to sustain the business at least through September, which all the money that you save when you do that compounds, that allows you to get farther and farther down the road. So week one was very difficult. It was very emotional. We learned some good stuff, but it became very clear that what a lot of people needed help with was cash flow, because many of you have not done cash flow since you were a startup, or the version of cash flow that you do is that cash management, crisis management of how to get a deposit in so you can make payroll so that you can get back to doing things as normal, which is never having enough cash. So for many of you, a cash flow crisis is normal. Well, this is a different kind of cash flow crisis. So the spreadsheet that I presented to you in week 2, it's still available out there. Every time I go in to take a look at it, and I find people in there using it. Here's the link that will get you to it if you don't remember where it is or how to get to it. Of course, it's also on the replay page for the webinars. It's been a good tool. I still use it. I use it for my business to keep track of things. So take advantage of that. Use these tools that I'm sharing with you, but that was a pretty big one, and many of you have told me that was very valuable for you. Week 3 became all about the CARES Act and what would eventually become the Payroll Protection Program. We learned more about the economic injury disaster loan, the EIDL loans. This is all US-centric stuff. I'm not going to go any deeper into that. My biggest regret about this week is I think the advice I gave was fine. I probably wouldn't give the same advice today. We didn't learn enough about the programs or soon enough. And I think it's great that many of us brought our employees back for an 8-week period, and we passed that cash through. And for many of them, that was a huge benefit, and they very much appreciated it. But in hindsight, a lot of businesses, that may not have been the best thing for the business. But, the human thing to do is sometimes ignore your business sense and take care of the people. And many of you did that. And that's what that program allowed. So we also talked about in week 3 about how you have an opportunity for a do-over. All the things that you screwed up getting your business to where it is today, if you could go back and change it and not have to undo so many things in order to do it, now's the time to do it. If you were 120 employees and all of a sudden you're at 10, guess what? There's a lot of systems and processes that you can walk away from and start over. And whether it's, software or, sales protocols or how you do marketing, how you manage your warehouse, it doesn't matter. The point is you get to change it. And many of you have. So look at your business objectively and make the hard decisions about how would you do it again and do it better. We had a self-assessment test in there. That was a good week. Week 4. Of course, now we are talking about, this is before we were talking about pivoting your business. We were really more focused on how can we hold on as long as possible. We had a lot of discussions on how to handle the deposits that you've received from clients, some of whom were kind of expecting to get that money back because you aren't doing the event. So there was a new crisis for us to deal with. So we talked about terms and conditions. We talked about how to manage deposits in the future. We talked about how to go back and negotiate a settlement on the deposits that you have now. And some of you are still in the midst of all of that, but I hope that's been working for you. I created a sample terms policy sheet as a Google sheet. It's text that you can copy and use as you will. There's the link for it. I'll put the link on the replay page as well for today. There's some good stuff in there. It's a policy that I would circulate internally. It's about helping my sales and finance team understand how our policies might work. So it's a starting point for you to give you an idea of what the finished product might look like for you. Feel free to use that. We all need to have documentation about what our policies are when it comes to something like this. Week 5, we're into dynamic pricing. There was a lot of questions about, what was going to happen to our pricing going forward when the shows came back. Were customers going to be willing to pay the same amount? At the time, I thought we'd have some price depression. I no longer believe that. I believe that we will actually be able to maintain our pricing, if not even command higher pricing, because I think there's going to be a little bit of a thinning of the herd of the available suppliers. It's not that companies are going out of business, is that you're all smaller. You're going to be more selective about the jobs that you take on, which means that you're going to be a little bit more brave about your pricing, hopefully. And we're also getting into a new territory where we're doing a lot of services, video production and streaming. There's a lot of pre-production that goes into these projects, and the numbers are quite different. A little bit of gear, a huge amount of people. We're seeing some, companies that weren't seeing 6-figure jobs are now getting an opportunity to touch 6-figure jobs, but it's mostly soft services. So there's a lot of opportunity there to recover your margin that has kind of frittered away over the past. But the idea of dynamic pricing is that you price based on demand, okay? Not based on the market, not based on your competitor. You look at the demand, you look at what you can afford to do this job for. And when you're slow and you need the cash flow, you're going to price more aggressively. When you're busy, you can price, higher and try and get a better margin because you're taking more of a risk when you're busy. So good discussion. It was all, again, we still haven't talked about pivoting our businesses yet because we're waiting for our normal business to come back. Now in week 6, we started talking marketing and sales because it became very apparent to me that the reason that a lot of people weren't pricing aggressively or using dynamic pricing is because they were so afraid of upsetting customers or doing anything that the customer wasn't used to, and they feared losing the business. And if you're fearful, every time you put a quote out, if you're fearful of not getting the job, you're not going to price smartly. And how do you get out of that situation? Well, you need more opportunities to quote. And where do opportunities come from? Well, it comes from marketing. It doesn't come from sales. Sales don't create opportunities. Sales process opportunities. We need marketing to bring us more opportunities. And if I've got 3 jobs that I'm quoting, right, I'm much more likely to quote an aggressive price knowing that I'm going to get at least one of them. If I only have 1 job at a time that I'm quoting, I'm afraid of losing that job and I'm going to price it accordingly. So there's a correlation between how we price and how we market. So we need more marketing. It's not optional anymore. So we talked about how all the parts and pieces. Now, the interesting thing about the marketing discussion is in the post-pandemic era or whatever era we're in now, it doesn't change. Marketing still works the same way. Now, what you do in marketing, the technique you apply, the content you share, the wording in your messaging, the images that you might use to brand your company may get tweaked. but the process of marketing is still the same. You still have to create a funnel. You still have to get leads and turn them into prospects, turn them into opportunities, turn that into business, and then repeat the process. So you still have a brand to promote in all of this. It's probably even more important now. And we can't talk about marketing without sales. And the most important thing about selling is to understand your customers. So in week 6, we spent a little time looking at my methodology of customer buying styles and the decision factors that they use to choose to work with you or not work with you, or make this choice or this option or not. So now, this is extremely important right now, because for many of you, your buyers have changed. They have different needs and wants in a crisis, and they have very different concerns than they did 4 months ago. But in many cases, your buyer has been replaced. They may still have a job, but the gig, the event that they're doing, is now in somebody else's hands, because it went from being a regional event to a global event because they can stream it, right? So you're going to have to learn new people, learn new committees. You have to read them quickly so you know what to ask. So pay close attention to the changes in your buyer channel and the people that you're dealing with, and don't count on the person you've always done business with being able to continue to make those decisions if their organization is changing. Week 7, had to give operations some love. By week 7, we had to start to consider what team to bring back and what they should do. Part of this was, how do I reboot my company? If I bring the crew back, and we restructure everything to make it work more scalably. Some of you are uncomfortable with the idea that people are going to come back and retool everything to eliminate their job. But with PPP in the US being the subsidy, and your company is going to be 75% smaller after the subsidy is over, what are you going to do with that money? What are you going to do with that time? And many employees wanted to come back and wanted to be part of that. And for most of you, that period is over. And now you're looking at putting people back on furlough again. The death spiral, that whole death spiral about being overstaffed and underprocessed, not having enough outsourcing, letting operations being the constraint in your business, your margins being diminished through overburdened operational processes and keeping too many people on staff year round when you only have 6 busy months. This is all about scalability. So we had some honest conversations, or I guess it's not a conversation if I'm just sitting there talking at you all the time, but I shared some honest truth about what it is that operations is going to have to do differently coming out of this in our rebooted businesses that are more scalable, that are not going to ramp back up to their prior levels of staffing and resources, that we're going to build back slowly and carefully and learn how to make money along the way. So that lack of scalability is why the sudden downturn was so devastating to so many businesses, because many of you were overextended financially, you were overstaffed, and you were already suffering from low margins, and you didn't know how to fix that. And now you've got this crisis and you need to fix that, but you need the people to fix it. But I can't afford the people because of the problem. And we have this Ouroboros vicious circle of issues. So we're going to break that cycle. That's part of what we're talking about now. That's part of what your reboot is about, is breaking the cycle. So operations has got some very important things they've got to change. They've got to do vital work, and they've got to quit puttering. Projects have to have an end. There has to be a zero state in the business. Floor space is an indispensable tool. Moving things 2 and 3 and 4 times is anathema to a process person like me. So there's a lot of things that we have to do in operations so that we can run with a leaner crew with very few regular full-time people, but being able to bring in an outside staff and have transferable processes, as teachable processes, just like we do shows. I mean, really, you got to run the shop the way you run a show site. It's the same methodology. I don't keep the crew around after the show is set up. I only keep the operators around. So you need a business of the operators that you need to run your business. and you need to outsource everyone else. Um, so we did in week 8, took a little strategic turn here, and I created an issue processing exercise for you. Many of you are coming to me with a lot of conflicting issues, and you've got your feelings and you've got your concerns, and stuff that's not in your control, and it's clouding all of your thinking. It muddies things up. It's the what abouts. Oh, but what about? Oh yeah, we need to do that. Ooh, what about? So how do you handle all of that? So I gave you an exercise where you walk through, where you picked out the words that are keeping you up at night, that symbolize the different issues that you're facing, and then how to take those words and turn them into something that you can be productive with. It's not necessarily a solution, but it's a way to open up your mind to ideas that you might not have had before, because the words are getting in your way. So we look at the words, we figure out what our master words are, and then there are subwords that go with them. And then we create descriptors, and we say, okay, what can I do for this information, with all of this information? Will it make me think differently about the problem? And many of you report to me that you've done this exercise. You can continue to do it. I still use it all the time. If you don't recall this, or you miss this one, go back and watch week 8. It's a good exercise. I highly recommend it. Now, as we moved on into week 9, we were starting to get the inklings here in the U.S. of some cities and states reopening, trying to reopen businesses, trying to, push that economy back into motion by letting people out of quarantine and things like that. And it created some hope, but for most of us, we realized it wasn't really going to make shows happen again. So that's what was going on in our minds. But the first reopen is kind of what we're in right now. And the first reopen, as turns out, is a lot of streaming gigs, lots of virtual graduations, lots of drive-in theaters. And it may not be the work that you're going to hang your career on or put at the top of your resume. They may not make the brochure, but they're keeping the doors open, they're keeping people busy, and it's honest, satisfying work. And that's what we're seeing. So this is also the week that we introduced the Live Eventopoli game, which was about learning how to maximize your investment opportunities, how to consider the odds and the risk of what you're doing, and the fact that sometimes you only have one chance to be lucky, and how do you increase the odds that your luck is going to pay off and all that. So it's a good way to consider the game. The game is on the replay page. You can go back and get it. There's a set of rules there that are really incomplete, but there's enough to get started there so you can figure out what the rest of the rules should be. And it gives you a way to look at the different markets that you work in, the types of things that you do for people, and be really objective about which ones are worth your time. If you've gone from a $10 million company, and right now your run rate's at $2 million, okay, $8 million of something went away and there's $2 million of something left. Where is that $2 million on the board, and where is the next $2 million? Because you're not going to get back to 10 million overnight. So play the game, have some fun with that. That was a fun week as well. Now, week 10, we talked about rethinking the customer, really meeting the customer where they are. We're having conversations again. Customers are kind of afraid to reach out, because you say, hello, how are you? Great. Oh, you might have your event. Great. When can we get a deposit? Nobody wants that. They're reaching out for information. They're testing the waters, and we need to figure out where they are and have a solution, have a conversation for that moment, and then have an idea of what that next conversation would be. Do we need to educate the customer? Do we need to prove our credibility or our capability in an area to help them move forward? What is it the customer needs right now? And it's not about, can I get a contract on the show? I had one sales manager who told all of his people, every time you get a customer on the phone, offer them a 3-year agreement. 3-year agreement to do what? These people don't even know what they're doing tomorrow or next week. you're offering them 3 years of what? So it's the wrong conversation. Meet customers where they are. So we broke customers into in 4 stages of where they are: the engaged, the curious, the aware, and the unaware. And we talked about how you would talk to them. If somebody is really unaware of what the issues are about having a hybrid meeting, I probably need to educate them. I need to help them interpret the information that they have. If they are aware that it's an issue, but they don't know what to do about it, then I can help them see, here are some common problems and pitfalls and decisions that you're going to need to make. Here are some complete answers about how something would work so they can be confident in who you are and your ability to support them. Curious people, we want to get down and explore hidden issues. Like, yeah, I understand. We need to do a hybrid meeting, but what I'm really curious about is, how do we do this? How do we switch 5 computers, or how do we get audio from this place and cover, mix it with audio from another place? We need to help them explore what their hidden issues are. And engaged people are really, they want to hear about all this other stuff. They want to know, do you have solutions? Can you make their ideas better? And can you get started? So we need to understand what is going on in the engagement by meeting the customer where they are, adjusting our conversation, our side of the conversation, to match their side of the conversation so we can move them forward. And always you need to know where you're going to move them next, right? Every phone call or conversation or video call ends with scheduling the next one, right? We don't want to have an hour-and-a-half call. What we might want is to have 5 10-minute calls, or maybe it's only going to take 3 10-minute calls if you put the right content into each conversation and get the right people there. Week 11 seems like so long ago, but it was last week. We talked about the curse of the bell curve. We're all waking up and discovering that our market position changed while we were focused on the triage of crisis management. And all of a sudden, we used to be right in the middle of the pack, and all of a sudden we're way off over there on the edge. And some of us are struggling with having the credibility that we need to have in the world of streaming events, for instance. So now we're on the preceding edge of streaming events instead of on the leading edge of corporate meetings. So it doesn't matter how you got there. The fact is, the playing field changed. Everybody in the bell curve shifted up or down one way or the other, and you've got to recognize where you are. It tells you where to put your energy. The whole idea of credibility has been a big conversation the past couple of weeks, because there's a lot of people who are fielding opportunities, regular clients that show they've done. I have one poor business owner, bless his heart, they've done the show for 15 years, and the buyer is going, well, yeah, but we've got a quote from somebody to do the streaming event. Well, I haven't told you about our streaming capabilities. And the client said, well, I didn't know you had any. These guys came to us and they seem to do a lot of streaming meetings and know how to do it. So my client now has this really unfortunate position, is he has no credibility in streaming events. He's never told the client he knows how to do it. He didn't anticipate it. He didn't get ahead of demand. Remember back in week 1 and week 2, we were, talking about getting ahead of our customers' needs by saying, hey, they're going to be asking us about streaming events. We better get our act together really, really quick. So now all of a sudden he's in a really bad spot because the work he needs to do, he doesn't have the gravity to convince people that he knows how to do it. So he's got a huge marketing problem he's got to deal with. Not so much an internal problem, because they do know how to stream events. They just never bothered to tell anybody about it. So it doesn't matter, where you are. What matters is where you go from here, right? What are you going to do next? So I finished up last week, and I believe this very, very sincerely, and that's why this week is really a recap. It is time to move on, right? You can make money at any size of business. Right now, you have no revenue. Honestly, no one can make money when there's no revenue, right? But revenue is coming. It is starting to come back up. You're having those conversations. You do need to hold on for a little bit longer before you're not just depending on your cash reserves to survive, you will have some revenue to add to that cash flow projection. But you're going to be doing it from a smaller base. You're going to be doing it with a changing customer. But whatever you do, you will make money at it. And the more of it you do, the quicker you cover your overhead, and then you can get back into growth and profitability. And there's no reason that by the end of this year that you can't be profitable if you've gotten your company down to the size that it needs to be. Now, for some of you, I know that's tough. You've got some major overhead. I have lost track of how many people just bought 200, 1,000, 2,000 tiles of LED and took delivery in Q1 of this year in anticipation of all the events that they were doing for the year. I've talked to many, many people who have just moved into new building spaces or are moving in later this year, are not getting out of those leases. So they're doubling their floor space while their company is a quarter of the size that it was 3 months ago. I get all of that. It is hard to shed overhead, but realism, realistic expectations tells you how hard you have to work at doing that. You know, if there's absolutely no way you're ever going to be able to support the rent or the lease on a new building that's much, much bigger than you need now, then you need to figure out everything you can possibly do to mitigate that. Okay? That's where your energy needs to go. So you've got to get that overhead down. Now, for most of you, we've been at this for 12 weeks. You've done the hard part already. All right? You've done the things that you need to do. You're at airplane mode. You're ready to wait and take the business as it comes and build your business back up. So let's quit talking about how we got here, and let's just talk about what we're going to do going forward, which is how I want to spend the next 8 weeks. So that brings us to this moment where we've kind of graduated. Wait a minute. I think I have a sound cue here. Let me try it. All right. I don't have OBS. Zoom audio sucks. But I needed to put a little soundtrack to go with this. So I dressed up for you today because today's a big deal. 12 weeks of this is a big deal. 12 weeks of triage is it's brutal. It's brutal for you. It's hard on me. This has been one of the hardest things I've ever done in my career. And I used to be a show guy. So I want to tell you how much I appreciate you guys. I want to celebrate. Sorry, I'm going to go off camera here. I've got a glass for you. I've got a glass for me. And my God, I need a drink. So I'm going to take some questions. This is a great time for you to be typing in your questions while I get this sucker open. I'm going to open it safely because I used to be a waiter and I know how to do that. I'll pour one for you first. If you don't get around to drinking it, don't worry. I'll do it for you. So, finally, we get to that point where we can have a Zoom cocktail hour. Here's to you guys. Thank you for your time and attention. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for the chats and the comments. And yeah, here's to some quarantine day drinking to you. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have. Oh, thank you. Now, let's get back to work here. If you've got some questions, let's get those things in there. I'd love to talk about that. I need to tell you what's going to happen next. This part of the webinar series is over. We're not going to do this triage stuff anymore. We're going to get back. We're going to work on our business. You're in the middle of a business reboot. You may not think you are, but the fact is the longer you're in it, the more you're going to realize that a lot of things have changed, if not everything. So I want to move this into a format that I've used before of doing a weekly Q&A about what's going on in your business right now. I mean, what are the things that you're facing right now? I'll give you a topic each week. It'll come from your suggestions. Please send your suggestions in. Send your questions in. I'll answer the pre-submitted questions first. I'll build a little content around them. If there's a tool or whatever that I need to share with you, I'll share that with you. We'll go through some prepared content to answer your questions. We'll take more live questions, and your questions can be about anything, but we're going to prompt. I want you to be able to focus on some stuff, and that is going to be important for you. You may not have realized that next week you really need to be talking about proposals. All right, your proposals should be changing dramatically right now. Not just the terms and conditions that we've talked about, not just pricing that we've talked about. It's the presentation of the value proposition that your proposal represents. And I don't care if you're doing dry hire rentals, how you present that will dramatically affect your ability to not only win the business, but capture the margin that you're trying to catch. So if you have questions about proposals and how you doing yours, how do you write them? What's the follow-up you need to use on a proposal? You know, what should you include in a proposal versus not include? You give them more detail or less detail. Ask, right? Let's learn how to do this together. I've got decades of experience in selling services and selling value. And we're now in an era where our value is in soft services. It's not the hardware anymore. Right now, you may probably rent your gear a tenth of the time that you normally do compared to years past, but your people and your intellect are going to be very much at work. This is where I have a lot of experience. Now's the time to ask some questions about how this will work in your world. And I don't care what part of the business that you're actually in. If you're in hotel services, I've gotten enough quotes from in-house AV to know that they don't know how to write a proposal either. So do ask those questions. I'll share my template with you, explore it with you, and tell you what has changed in our next normal compared to the last time you may have seen me present that. So this is the kind of thing I want to do for the next 8 weeks. We can hone in on different areas of the business and do some deep dive questions and have this reference table. You can go back at any time and find these tools or review these webinars, and we will keep it back respectfully within that hour. Okay, so awesome. It's not actually champagne. This is Prosecco, which is really perfect for this time of year. So that's next week. So I've extended the invitations. It's on your calendar. If you're free to attend, please come. If you don't want to attend, watch it later, that's fine. If you've gotten everything you ever want to hear from me again, then just simply delete it and move on. So I got a couple of questions coming in here. You guys could probably write a few more and it wouldn't kill you. But here's my final thought from a quote from Andy Grove, of all people. A strategic inflection point is a time in the life of a business when its fundamentals are about to change. That change can mean an opportunity to rise to new heights, but it may just as likely signal the beginning of the end. And it all depends on your response to the next moment. And here we are. What's your response to the next moment? Well, you're all here, so I'm imagine you continue to do the things that you need to do to run your business. So let me pop in here and see if we got any questions going on. Remember, put your questions in the Q&A box. There's too much noise in the chat box for me to find the questions. So question here, I'm going to read this question. I don't think I'm going to like it, but I'm going to read it. For labor, can we all adopt a 28% line item for payroll expenses like the TV film people do? Will reinforce your angle on charging more for labor? So what the question is asking is that can we deconstruct our labor number to show that there's 28% that goes to, nonprofit overhead on the job? And it's not uncommon in the film industry and the TV production industry to do that sort of thing. But again, these are payrolling companies. So if you are reselling labor, just like you re-rent equipment, so it's dry hire equipment, dry hire labor, re-rented labor, then, itemizing, the 28% of the payroll expenses that go along with it is not unheard of. As a industry standard, I don't like it at all because most of us are not in the labor business. We're in the outcome services business. So I don't disagree with the idea in the right application. I just don't think it has a universal application for us. But thanks for putting it out there. Your business, this may be ideal for. If you're in the labor industry, the staffing industry, this is something that you might consider, particularly if you're working on a project basis, a show or event staffing, that sort of thing. Yes, well, no, I didn't get a new microphone. This is an old microphone. I just didn't feel like wearing a headset today because it would get in the way of my Prosecco glass. All right, so we haven't had a PPP question, or I had a question for a while. We have just received PPP and our EIDL funds. We just received an offer for an SBA loan. We are not sure if we're going to accept the loan. Is there any downside or reason we should not go ahead and move forward with an SBA loan application process? All right, so you're in the same boat that I'm in. I got my PPP money. I got the EIDL grant money, which is a per person, $1,000 per employee grant. And that is a grant, but if you take out a loan, a disaster relief loan, that money comes out of that loan. But you don't have to repay that money. So what happens, and the SBA handles the EIDL, the Emergency Relief Fund, which is separate from PPP. Eventually you'll get a login where you can go in and start the application process and move the little slider to the amount of money that you want to borrow. The interest is, I have it right here because I'm in the middle of it. It's 3.75% on a 30-year loan. If you borrow $150,000, that's $731 per month payment. You only have to pay interest for the first year before you pay the principal back. Now, there's not a right or wrong answer to this. If you feel that you don't have control over your cash flow, or it's going to take you longer to get back into business, in other words, if you're really not a streaming company and you're only really going to support the in-person events, which means that 2021 is when you're going to start seeing some significant revenue again, then yeah, why not take a 3.75% loan? Let's sit on that money, put it in a separate account, use that money to pay back the loan, and treat it as a line of credit. So I can make a really good argument that this becomes your line of credit. And if you don't have a line of credit, then I strongly recommend that you get this loan, put it into a money market account or something at your bank, and then get a line of credit against it, right? So that you can establish credit and have a line of credit. I've had a Signature line of credit for years, but it's because I put money, tied up money, got a line of credit against it, borrowed, paid back, borrowed and paid back. And now the bank trusts me and they know where I live. But the fact of the matter is I have an unsecured line of credit. So yeah, if you don't have a line of credit, I would definitely do that. If you have a lot of other credit facilities, then you're used to having debt and managing debt, in which case I would get it because it's cheap money. If you are debt adverse, as many of you are and should be, and you can get by without it, then get by without it. Because if debt makes you queasy, if it keeps you up at night, if it causes you to lose focus on your business because, oh, that money's there so I can take this risk, and you shouldn't be taking risks, then don't do the loan. That's the reason not to do it. I told one coaching client the other day, I said, if you need the money, don't take it because that's the wrong reason. If you need the money, you should have done some other things so that you wouldn't need this extra money. And unfortunately, that's the nature of finance. The people who need loans are the ones who can't get it. And banks look at you and say, well, you need a loan. You're not a good risk, right? Well, here you are. You have an opportunity to get some money, but make sure you're doing it for the right reason and using it correctly. That's a good question. I'm sure it'll probably come up again. But I love the idea of using it as your business line of credit, and helping getting your bank to set up a line of credit that goes against that money so that you can develop a better banking relationship. Another question. I'm gonna watch our time here. Okay, bringing text back. Question: bringing text back from furlough after the stay has been lifted during the remaining PPP to perform project work below their pay grade and build a studio knowing they may get furloughed again has been tough, yet ownership can't make promises until we regain some revenues. So thoughts? All right. This is a complicated problem that a lot of you are having. You've got your PPP money. You're supposed to bring people back for 8 weeks so that you can get the forgivable amount, because technically it would be free labor, except a lot of those people don't want to come back to work because if they were an hourly worker, they might be making more on unemployment than you were paying them before, which means that you weren't paying enough money, just my opinion. So they may not be interested in doing that. They also may not be interested in coming back knowing that they're just going to get laid off again because you still don't have any work. This is where honesty and transparency and leadership all come into play, because that's how you need to present it. Say, look, guys, I have this money. I can pay you. I can keep your benefits going longer. I can maintain your health care. You know, there's got to be value for them besides a paycheck and wearing a mask in the warehouse. So look at that overall value. There is no reason, there's nothing that says that you have to use your PPP money for payroll. You can just treat it as a loan. Don't worry about what you can get forgive or get a small portion of it forgiven, like for rent and the things that also apply, and just use it for cash flow. Bring back people that you can. If you can only bring a couple people back, you'll get it. They're changing the rules. It's going to be easier to use that money. I think you're going to have more time to do it once it all gets passed. But yeah, it's a problem. Trying to bring people back when you're just going to lay them off again, they're onto it. I don't blame them. But some people have work ethic and that's what they want to do. Let them, offer them the work if you can. So it's a tough question. My thoughts are, be honest, be straight up about what it is that you can and can't do and how long you can do it for. I said, I can give you work for 8 weeks, but after 8 weeks, I have no guarantee. I was a freelancer for years. I'd take 8 weeks of work anytime I could possibly get it. So make the offer, but be honest about it. Question, Tom, a lot of prospects are saying they've already transitioned to virtual. Hello. I've been trying to get as many calls in since the beginning of this as possible, but we didn't get to where we could start offering virtual events until a couple of months ago. Did I already miss my chance to get in on the game? No, that's a good question. You didn't miss your chance to get on the game. You just need to get back at it. So what? You don't play in the first quarter. Play in the second quarter. Big deal. Figure it out. Take it to market. Get all the complimentary experience to reinforce your credibility on that and get back to work. Look at all of us. I mean, all of us have been in business for a long time and we didn't know everything on the first day. I started off as a slide projectionist and I had to learn video projection. The fact that I had missed learning video projection for the first, 2 years of my career didn't mean I was never going to be a video projectionist. So go back and learn it, go figure it out, and keep marketing because you need those calls. And some of those customers will come back to you. And if you start demonstrating what you can do online, sharing stuff in social media, on your website, in your newsletter, they may come back to you and say, I didn't realize you did this. Or maybe the people they hired weren't that good at it. So yeah, keep trying. Another question, any word on the street if any of the major AV services or gear providers have monopolized our industry in the last few years that have monopolized? I don't like where this is going. Yeah, basically, do I have any dirt on the big companies? No. It's like, and it doesn't make any difference. So here's my thought. I'm also curious about how things are going and what might happen. But the fact is, it's one thing to be curious about it as an industry person. I don't encourage anybody to worry about what their competition is doing. The more you focus on the competition, the less you're focused on stuff that matters. You have no control over the competition. Just put your head down, deal with your customers, meet them where they are, do the business that they can. If some of the big companies are an obstacle to you doing business, change your tactics. change your strategy, find another way to approach it. These issues are not new. That we've been dealing with, companies that have exclusivity in hotels since, I was a grunt tech in the 80s. I mean, none of this is actually new. So do your work, do your business, and be aware of the circumstances affecting your marketplace, and you'll do better. Is the EIDL loan still requiring you to be personally liable? Yes, it is a personal guarantee from my understanding, where PPP doesn't have a guarantee, but if you go to the SBA and get a loan, there's a personal guarantee. I don't know a bank that's going to lend, anybody who's going to lend you money without a personal guarantee these days. But if you want a collateralized loan, you're going to have to go to a bank and not go through an SBA guarantee. An SBA guaranteed loan means that you're going to have to personally guarantee it. I do want to acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of civil unrest going on and protests and things, and they're probably affecting events. Honestly, I hesitated to get dressed up today and day drink because the news is devastating. I'm not happy about it. These things upset me as well as they do you. I don't have a business angle on this. This stuff happens. I remember I was traveling somewhere, and the G20 summit or something was in Seattle, and there were protests that turned into, riots, I guess, in Seattle. And I called my wife and said, "Have you heard about the riots in Seattle?" And she goes, "What are you talking about?" So unrest happens, and it can be broad, it can be narrow, and it will have a short-term effect on our business. The bigger effect on our business is the fact that we still have a pandemic, and the pandemic is the issue that we're dealing with, and that should really be the focus of our business. News is news. Keep up with the news. Do what you need to do about the news. But right now, I'm not seeing a big effect on our industry that is even in comparison to the other crap that we're dealing with. Question on, two more questions here. What are your thoughts about SB 50 and how this will affect future shows? This is the law in California that basically makes it, and these are harsh words because I don't agree with them, but people say it makes it illegal to be a freelancer, which is not really true. It just changes the employer-freelancer relationship, contract worker relationship to have to be a payroll position. I think this is where it's all going to. I think it's our future. It's going to go across the entire nation. I think it's going to go faster now that we've seen some of the issues created by the economic crisis that we're in now, that this is going to become more important. So be prepared for that. The cost of labor is going to go up. We've been subsidizing our business by underpaying people and not giving them benefits or letting them have the health care that they need. And it's not really sustainable. So I expect a lot of that to change. The employers are going to have to pick up that, which means the customers are going to have to pick up some of that cost. Do you have any thoughts on a second wave of COVID infection, how that possibility would change strategy? I am not an epidemiologist. I still stand by statements I've made earlier that we will have a second wave of this. I kind of believe Dr. Fauci and others who think that we're going to have a pretty serious fall hit of flu and COVID. I think we'll have an upswing. I think we're seeing some upswings right now, localized with the reopenings. So it's going to be untenable for a while. But the fact of the matter is, all of that's kind of factored into the prognosis that we're not going to be out of this year, that we're going to get a little bit of business back. I still think your Q4 will be 25% of what Q4 was last year, which sounded horrible to you 4 weeks ago, which sounds awesome right now. So all of that takes into account the fact that we are going to have some ups and downs on the recovery from COVID and the recovery of the economy in general. And then last question here. What do you do if some independent contractors only want to work if they are paid cash? All right, that's an honest question. I got to answer that. if they want to be paid cash, I think it's probably right now, it's more of a reflection on you than them and your ability to pay people in a timely manner. Also, for some of them, if they're on unemployment, every time they work, that's going to affect their unemployment. So they want that cash in hand. I'm a big, I want to pay freelancers as quickly as possible. I know how important it is for your business to be scalable, to have access to a freelance community. So I want to pay them as fast as I possibly can. So yeah, do I want to pay somebody cash? No, because that's paying under the table and that's bypassing the system, and there is reporting that needs to happen. But if I can pay them legally, instantly, or extremely quickly, then that's going to build a lot of favor for you. It's going to build, increase your credibility, make people want to come to work for you. They have to choose where they go work. Somebody who's going to pay them. I told the story probably, second week or so about one of the folks I know who literally goes out on show site every day with his checkbook and pays all of his workers at the end of the day, all of his contractors, writes them a check at the end of the day. And obviously those people are very loyal to him, right? Because they got cash in hand and they don't have to chase their money down, and that's worth a lot to people. So take the information for what it's worth. What is it telling you about their situation or about your reputation or where you are in your business, and make those adjustments however you can. You're not going to extend your cash flow by paying people later. Your cash flow is going to be your cash flow. So if I have to choose between, paying my rent check 30 days late and paying a freelancer, I'm going to pay the freelancer, because that's what's going to let me get more business. So that's my opinion. Now, having said that, here we are out of time. Almost kept it to an hour. Thank you guys for all your support in all of this. Thank you for everybody you've told about this to get them on here as well, so that we can help them. Thank you for the opportunity for me to work with so many of you to help you through this crisis. And now let's just get on with doing business, because we got some business to do. It's exciting and new. There are stuff that we haven't done before, which always gets me charged up. We have some awesome mistakes we can get out there and make, and there's lots of good money to be made because we're in a whole new world. So I hope you enjoy that and can make the best of that. So be well, be safe, and we'll see you next week.